Check. Test. 1 2 1 2.
Everyone to the May 16th Finance and Administrative Committee meeting. Cindy, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we are.
Call the roll, please.
Certainly. Mr. Alfred?
Here.
Mr. Ames?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Thank you.
Next, we have approval of our minutes from our April 18th, 2023 meeting.
Move adoption is written.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Certainly. Mr. Alfred?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yep.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Next, we have appearance by citizens. Did anyone signed up today?
Yes, sir, we have Mr. Skip Hoagland.
Can we have these lights turned off, please? Is there a reason for it?
Yes, Mr. Ames, we are trying to win an award for the best looking town council in the country. And the camera picks up our lights a lot better this way. We've been informed by our
I don't want to disappoint you.
assistant town clerk that we have to keep the lights on, okay? So, sorry.
Just like
I'll wear
that, Mr.
sunglasses
Brown.
next time.
Just like that. You look
Mr. Hoagland,
wonderful.
please, sir.
You're in FOIA violation, and this is from the Finance Administrative Committee website. Alex, I do not blame you for anything I'm getting ready to read. The Finance Administrative Committee reviews and analyzes the town's budgets and financial statements, including balance sheet management, vendor contracts, accommodation tax funds, and the town's designated marketing organization. Can you please provide what you've done in this regard? The committee also establishes and measures annual performance goals for the town manager and perform evaluations of such services. Orlando is a hired insider from Bluffton and was caught breaking the law. Why did we not hire an outside manager? Gruber from Beaufort, also the same. We must stop the baton passing from one county to the city. Committee monitors the performance of the town's designated marketing organization. What have you monitored? Why do you keep handing millions of Bill Miles who refuses to show his accounting and operates the DMO in complete violation of the law? You determine the manner and method by which the town will conduct an annual performance review of the town manager. Can I get a copy of this performance review? Will Mr. Orlando, Troyer, and Coltrane agree to a forensic audit? If not, why not? How else can you determine if everything is being run properly and legally? Does excessive legal fees not concern you, and a legally operated DMO with millions unaccounted for also concern you? Do you consider consider all of this a gold standard town manager performance? You build and maintain relationships with local, county, state, and federal governments and departments, as well as formulate positions for the town council review. Have you talked to anyone about the missing millions of A-tax and hospitality tax? Have you called the Attorney General, the FBI, or the IRS? Have you talked to any of these agencies? You receive periodic reports from the representatives of Beaufort County Legislative Delegation. Where are the copies of these reports? You work with regional governmental bodies such as the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation, the Southern Low Country Regional Board, and the Low Country Area Traffic Study Committee. What has been accomplished with each of these, and can you furnish these reports? I'm particularly interested in the traffic study. I barely got here today. Alex, thanks for complying to Lynn Greeley's legal right to assign me her POA document last meeting, and I will be making a brief statement for her today as well to speak on her behalf. That's greatly appreciated. I appreciate you. If anybody I appreciate and trust, it would be you out of the entire council, I can tell you that. Alex, I was surprised to learn that everyone in this finance committee are CPAs and not forensic audit experts. The CPAs I referred to are not certified public accountants. I cannot produce anything, officials. CPA cannot produce anything. We need to start producing something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Anyone else?
No, sir, that is it.
Thank you very much. We will move on now to our new business.
I don't have her, sir.
Yeah, she called in. She called in. She sent to not you, but I'm sorry, but she did. Yes, she did. I've got her email, so I can produce that for you after we finish. She sent the email to the town. But anyway, I'll make Ms. Greeley's statement because she did call in. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Hoagland. Our rules state that we have to call into the town clerk ahead of time. Ms. Greeley has not done that. So that's what we're hearing from our staff, correct?
Ms. Greeley did sign up.
We don't have her on record.
You want me to go ahead and produce that document to her?
No, I don't, but you can
Pardon?
you can go ahead and speak, but we don't have it. I want to go on record to understand
can
that she does not.
I can certainly produce that email.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Ms. Greeley, under her POA you received, wanted me to ask this council to answer to the press. We all read the article Sunday on Mother's Day. Allen Perry City saw 80% of the chamber's accounting receipts and invoices. Is this true? Who do you believe, Allen Perry or Skip Hoagland, on his discoveries and illegal tax use and law violations? Can any of you, including town lawyers, provide any facts, laws, videos, or evidence that Skip Hoagland has violated any rules of decorum, POA legal doc, or the First Amendment? And if you can, please provide this to the press and Magistrate Aaron Vaux, who also ruled against Skip Hoagland. Isn't it a fact Ms. Vaux ruled against the rule of law in complete violation of Skip's First Amendment rights under the Constitution of the United States of America? Also, her ruling had nothing to do with the POA legal document Skip presented to make my 3-minute speech on my behalf, which is good up until 2024. How is it possible to find an innocent man guilty with no law or evidence he violated anything? Not only including the town of Hilton Head, $50 million judgment, which is unheard of. It's insanity. In fact, the only person who has been violated with these illegal rulings and this $50 million judgment was Skip Hoagland. And it was his full legal civil rights under the First Amendment and Constitution that has severely and maliciously been violated with no laws or evidence. And I hope the FBI and Sheriff Tanner get involved immediately. If you all do not want to hear from Mr. Hoagland, all you have to do is stop breaking the laws and legal use of tax funds and force Gruber, Coltrane, and Orlando to abide by the law. That's all you've got to do, and I'll go fishing. You just be hearing about me going fishing down in Florida. I don't need to be here anymore. Thank you so much.
Okay, on to our new business. Review and discussion of the Town of Hilton Head Island Affiliate Agencies Memorandum of Understanding, program request, and statutory provisions. Mr. Gruber, you will be making a presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In your materials today are essentially a summary and outline of all of the affiliated agencies that were included within this year's funding cycle that did receive funding authorization. That process has not been concluded yet, as that will be done contemporaneously with second reading of the budget ordinance in June, but we used what's been approved at this point as an outline to then look back at all of the corresponding memorandums of understanding that we have with these agencies, or if not, whether there was some other document such as a statute or a regulation that spoke to the funding of those organizations. And so I will try to go through this kind of expeditiously, but if you have any questions, please stop me at any point in time. So the first affiliated agency that's identified here is the Island Recreation Association. The town has had a memorandum of understanding with the Island Recreation Association for some time. The most recent iteration of that document was signed in July of 2018 and is set to expire in September of this year. The agreement states that the Island Recreation Association will submit an annual budget for consideration by town council, and that at least 50% of its operating budget must be raised from sources other than town funding. Again, all of these MOUs that are referenced here, or if there are statutory provisions, were included in the backup documents. And so again, I won't go over those directly, but if you have any questions about them, please let me know. The next affiliated agency is the Coastal Discovery Museum. The existing agreement with Coastal Discovery Museum was signed in April of 2017, was for a 10-year period of time, and is therefore set to expire in June of 2027. The agreement states that the town will pay the Coastal Discovery Museum an operating fee of $75,000 annually in order to have the Coastal Discovery Museum operate the town-owned property at Honeyhorn. In addition, the Coastal Discovery Museum is required to submit an annual budget where the management fee is ultimately adjusted as may be agreed upon by the parties. And so I think you'll see in the spreadsheet that was contained here, it had been $75,000 up until FY23, and in FY23, they increased that request and was approved by town council. So the $75,000 is the baseline, but it is subject to adjustment based upon an agreement by both parties. We then have the historic Mitchellville Freedom Park. The existing MOU with Mitchellville Freedom Park was signed in March of 2021. It was set to expire in March of 2023. However, a new MOU was approved in April. We don't have the final signatures back on those documents, but what was approved by town council was a 10-year agreement, and therefore the agreement with them will go until March of 2033. The agreement states that the town will pay an annual management fee of $105,000 and that the remainder of the organization's operational budget will be satisfied from other sources. The agreement also requires that an annual operating budget be submitted to the town to coincide with our annual budget adoption. All right, now let's get into the ones that don't have existing memorandums. The first is University of South Carolina, Beaufort. As I believe the committee is aware, the funding for this entity has been typically called for in the town's code and was fixed as a percentage of collections of the local accommodations tax. We are in the process right now of amending that language. It has received first reading through town council. It has not received second reading yet, but will be coming up, I believe, in June for second reading.
Did not have an MOU because of the 5% obligatory?
Correct. So yes, the responsibilities of USCB and the town were both spelled out within the town's code. So the town's responsibility was to fund them at a fixed percentage of collections, and USCB's responsibilities were to offer the various programming that was outlined in that section. So special event management, hospitality and volunteerism, and then the Island Ambassador Program.
DMO follows in the same kind of language?
So this particular provision was within town's code. The DMO's provision is within the state's code. So that one we are fixed to have to comply with until the state changes it. But here we can and are in the process of changing this, which means that for future years, if it's recommended by this body, we can look at doing a memorandum of understanding with this organization, but would appreciate any policy guidance that you would give us in terms of what that should look like so that we can then discuss it with them further.
Josh, what was the reasoning behind giving a defined percentage to USCB? No? You may not know.
I know when the documents came about, and it was a discussion between town leadership and USCB about creating the Island Ambassador Program and providing support for some of the functions that were going on at the university. And I think at the time they looked at probably what the collections had been and said that a percentage of that would be appropriate to meet those needs. What's happened since that time is that our collections in these areas have grown as the economic activity has grown. And so there may no longer be a direct correlation between the amount of funding that's needed for the program and the services that they provide. And so I think that's why council's kind of instructed us to go forward with removing the fixed percentage and have it be based upon a budget submission that can then be agreed upon by the parties.
Very reasonable position for the town to take.
And very similar, as you see going through this document, very similar to what a lot of other agencies are doing as well. All right. Next is the Low Country Regional Transit Authority, otherwise operating as Palmetto Breeze. So Palmetto Breeze was created in 1978, which, if my math is correct, was before the town was incorporated as a municipality. So it was based upon Beaufort County, Jasper County, and the municipalities that existed at that time, creating this organization to serve as the Regional Transit Authority. Because it exists and because they went through the process to form it as outlined within the state code, that organization is now the authorized transportation service for public transportation within this service area. And our service area is generally defined now as the 5 county regions. So Beaufort, Jasper, Allendale, Hampton, and Colleton counties. And so Palmetto Breeze is that public service provider to all of those areas. Funding is still based upon an annual appropriation that must come from the local governments. And what you see now coming forward out of Palmetto Breeze is because of the size of the territory that they serve, some areas qualify for urban grant funding, some areas are still covered under rural grant funding. So because their services cross both, they submit a budget request that covers both entities, both rural grant funding and urban grant funding. But essentially, the routes that they run and the level of service that they provide to the island is based upon a budget that they submit that's ultimately approved by the town council. The next two have some history. So dating back prior to 2009, Beaufort County operated what was then known as the drug court. The drug court served to be a diversionary program to try to keep people out of being sentenced to jail or the detention center. So it would try to work with individuals to come up with treatment plans and other remediation strategies that were diversionary in terms of avoiding jail time. Because of concerns with the program at the time, the solicitor's office ultimately assumed responsibility for that programming. They approached the town as well as the other municipalities within Beaufort County and requested that they provide funding to what is now known as the multidisciplinary court. It's not just the drug court. So anybody who has substance abuse issues, mental health issues, or would otherwise benefit from being put in this, kind of pre-trial diversionary program, that court serves that function. So this is a specific appropriation to the solicitor's office for a specific function that they provide. Similarly, in 2009, the solicitor's office also created the Career Criminal Prosecution Team. The stated goal of that team was to look at habitual offenders and those individuals whose the seriousness of their crime warranted special prosecution to ensure that the public was kept safe and that those individuals were not released back into the community. And so beginning in 2009, the solicitor's office requested funding to pay for a portion of a salary for an individual who would be on this career criminal prosecution team. So we don't pay for just one individual, we contribute a portion of what goes towards a salary of one of these individuals. Next is the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation. The corporation was formed in 2017 by Beaufort County. But as part of its bylaws, it has as its members the various municipalities that were located in Beaufort County. And so either the mayor and or their designee serves on this body, and every year they develop a proposed budget for the participating members. And so we are not required to participate in this organization. It is a voluntary choice, but they do present us with a budget that says if you would like to participate, this is our proposed membership fee. They've also indicated that if at any point in time the membership fee is not fully funded, then they would need to look at restructuring the services that they're proposing to provide for that particular year. But the bottom line is they come forward with a proposed contribution that is supposed to be then directly tied to the services that they're going to offer for that particular fiscal year. And I believe lastly, we have as one of our affiliated agencies, the Heritage Classic Foundation. And while we don't have a traditional memorandum of understanding with them, we do have an executed sponsorship agreement. That agreement sets forth the amount of contribution financially that the town will make for this event, and in exchange receive certain advertising and publicity rights associated with hosting this event. So that's a summary of all of the affiliated agencies that we have for this year. The one that I left off was the Habitat for Humanity, because again, while they requested funding, it has not been approved, and so it's not one that's included on this list. But otherwise, all of these other organizations are identified for funding this year.
Okay. No question, Mr. Alfred. The Beaufort County EDC, being that we have a board member there and they're putting the budget together, is staff suggesting that we're not in need of a MOU there?
I would say that that's the case because we have direct representation on the services that are going to be provided. So rather than setting forth, here's what you'll do in exchange for it, we receive that through our board member working with the corporation and its executive director to understand what those services would be.
Okay, so in essence, we've got 4, Habitat 5 organizations that have
Yes, yeah, you've got USCB, LRTA, the Solicitor's Office, which is one entity, but two appropriations, and then the EDC.
Committee members, staff is asking for some direction, okay? But of course, I think we need to dive a little deeper into the details of each one of the MOUs. So at this point, if we could ask any questions of Josh or any directive as far as the expectations of MOUs with the list that we have here before us, so that we can, now, Glenn.
Is staff asking that we recommend MOUs because it would make somehow the job easier? It seems to me there's some distinctions between these various affiliated agencies, and so I'm trying to understand what it is I understand what you're asking for, but why?
Yeah, to the extent that there's an entity that's not already covered, I think USCB probably presents the most likely one that would benefit from having an MOU, just because we're changing what that relationship is now. Assuming that council does adopt the language that is proposed right now, I think a majority of that MOU is probably reflective of that amended language in terms of talking about the programming. I think the question in their mind is going to be, is there any kind of fixed funding level that comes with that? Similar to what you see with the Island Rec or Coastal Discovery or Mitchellville. You know, with all of those, you see that there is a baseline level of funding that's provided, and then they can request anything or submit a budget in furtherance of that. Given what we request from them, which is hiring an executive director and providing certain programming, I could see where they would want to know with some certainty that there's at least a base level of funding to go with it. And since we're pulling that out of the ordinance, that would benefit from having an MOU that would speak directly to it. The other entities, you know, the LRTA, the 14th Circuit, and the EDC, one, there's not necessarily other entities that we can go to for those services. They're directly with the only providers that are statutorily or by ordinance available, and they are for specific service-oriented programs. So from those, we could certainly do one. I don't know, at least not without having more discussion with the committee about what the expectations would be for those agreements, that we would be able to outline a whole lot more in detail than what's already kind of understood about the programs now. But to take and kind of reduce that to a formal document that's then signed by both parties, we could certainly do for any one of these.
It seemed to me that it makes sense to do one, have an agreement with USCB that gives them some level of comfort. That is, that there will be an allocation, but it doesn't make sense that we lock in a percentage that's always increasing and with budget creep. So I would favor it for USCB, and I'd be inclined to leave the others as is.
Yeah, thank you. Josh, do we have a definition of what an affiliated agency is?
So yes, when we were creating the pipeline that exists now to review these requests, we were looking for that standardization and that transparency. And as part of that, we defined affiliated agencies as an entity that's providing governmental services on the town's behalf, but through a third party. So for example, Island Recreation. The town does not operate its own Parks and Rec department, but we contract with Island Recreation to offer those services to the public on our behalf. So that is the definition of what an affiliated agency is.
Shore Beach Services, an affiliated agency?
It is. The difference with them, they are covered under a breach franchise agreement, which is an executed document between the parties. They could be added to this list. I don't know that historically they ever have been. That's certainly
I guess where I'm really headed is the public deserves to know why we are giving money to these agencies over time, and there's a long-term commitment. So I think a definition of who should receive that kind of money is probably good. And then secondly, if the town should have budget approval, which we do, but I think that should be understood. And then secondarily, that there's a verification or an audit at the end of the year, and that becomes a part of the agreement. So that I think I would be looking for some standardization of what town's expectations are for an affiliated agency. I think that does it. Thank you.
Alfred? We're gonna have public comment, just one moment. Okay, so, Mr. Gruber, just hearing, the comments thus far, I think scrubbing, so to speak, see if there are any other, partnerships that fall under that definition to be added, okay? And USCB seems to be a priority because there's nothing at the moment. And I noticed that the Island Rec Center's MOU is going to be coming up for renewal later this year, okay? So I think those three things we could start with as far as bringing something back to this committee. We'll start there unless there's something that comes from the public that sparks our interest, all right?
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment here? Ladies first, Mr. Hoagland. Let me get the ladies first, if you don't mind. Prince had her hand up at the same time as you, so I'm.
Thanks for this opportunity to address you. I agree with most of your comments. Most of these organizations seem to be providing services to the town specifically, so the town doesn't need to hire staff to do that. Island Rec is a good example, Coastal Discovery Museum. The one that I'm questioning that hasn't been mentioned so far is Heritage Classic. While I totally understand the desire on the part of the town to get the sponsorship visibility during the Heritage, I would think that would be a part of the town's regular marketing organization budget, not a direct funding from your committee. So I would question whether those dollars and requests shouldn't become part of the DMO's responsibility as a bigger vision as to the entire branding and marketing of our brand. And I would say that maybe those $300,000 or so would be better shifted into part of the DMO's budget. Thank you.
Hoagland.
David, music to my ears. Thank you for your comments. You're spot on. This is not a political, should not be about politics and should not be about heartfelt. It should be the way I think y'all can cover yourselves and win the popularity contest or not. It doesn't make any difference. You just follow the law. What does the aid tax law say as an example to legally fund somebody? What does that say? And then next is a contract, and the lawyers must be made to develop contracts that are proper, that spell out the legal use of these funds and full reporting and audit of these funds. And they must provide receipts and invoices, a total accounting, not some internal hired audit that doesn't show anything. This is what you have to do. It's just that simple. Your statement, again, your finance committee says, right on your homepage, on your website, it says, reviews and analyzes the town budgets and financial statements, including balance sheet management and vendor contracts, accommodation tax funds, and the town's designated marketing organization. I'm going to help y'all out greatly today because I'm going to give you just not only those simple ideas, aid tax law, contracts, boom, that's it. Simple as that. You got to comply by the law. But also the designated marketing organization, we got 11.5 million. I'd much rather see some of these folks funded than I would see that money just disappear and even being refused the accounting of that money. That's crazy to give somebody that kind of money and not ask them, like David says, to show us what you're doing with that money. Give us an accounting at the end of the year. Bill Miles might be the nicest guy in the world. He could be your brother. He could be the greatest guy ever. But he's got to show us where the money. He's got to show us the money. He's got to show us where he's doing with the money. The designated marketing organization, the DMO, it's so simple. The town just takes it in-house and hires an ad agency like Tom Gardo or somebody like that and just says, Tom, give us how much this is going to cost. Get 3 million tourists, keep them coming. What do we need to do in modern times with technology? And that gets into other things that you're going to be discussing about technology. And that's it. There's nothing else needed. You're going to get 3 million tourists, quite frankly, whether you have a DMO or not. So just take the 11.5 million and do something else with it. It's never going to change. We get free. The internet is providing tourists for free. Y'all have to understand that. So just take the DMO in-house, like other cities in the country, and just hire Tom Gardo or somebody else, and he'll do, I bet he would do it for $500,000. and he'd say, everybody, take the 11 million and fund these other people. I guarantee you that an ad agency will tell you that, if they're smart, if they're really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? And we welcome council members Becca and Bryson. Always welcome to the conversation if you feel the need to do so. Okay, Mr. Gruber, you've got what you need? We're good? Okay, thank you. We will move on. Our next item. Consideration of a resolution, Town of Hilton Head Island, approving the technology and innovation strategic plan. Mr. Sunday will give us a presentation. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for having me today. Really excited to present our strategic plan for fiscal years 24 through 26 with, we've put a lot of work into crafting this plan, coming up with a plan. You know, technology changes so much, but we're trying to give us a roadmap to get where we're trying to go. There we go. So technology trends, you know, change a lot, but as we keep moving forward, there's different things that are kind of hot topics. So just really going to quickly go over some of that. User expectations, you know, from a end user standpoint, you're trying to, we provide customer service. That's really 95% of technology is customer service. We're supporting you with spell check or problems with your computer, networking issues, things like that. So as that user experience is improved through us, through you know, proper training, supplying correct equipment that you need to get your job done, that's always a continuing thing that people need.
May I interrupt for just a
Yes, sir.
second? When you say user experience, are the users only town
No,
people,
no, sir.
staff, or community as well?
So we, as a technology department, we have internal and external customers.
Thank you.
We have, you know, town staff that we support council, and we support the citizens of our area also. Cyber threats, you know, a few years ago, it was a virus or malware was the problem of the day. Now it's ransomware, phishing, spoofing. So, you know, keeping up with those cyber threats is a daily, hourly fight. So keeping up with those changes and, you know, making sure our firewalls, our software that works alongside our firewall keeps us protected as much as possible.
Outside consultants in conjunction with cyber threats that you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We use a company called Arctic Wolf. So it's a monitoring service that helps us do the minute by minute, hour by hour monitoring. It helps alongside of our firewall to keep that proper monitoring.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir. Technology complexity. You think of all the different software programs, how so many of them need to interact with each other. So it's not just a plug and play anymore. It's, you have many different variables that you fight with to keep everything talking and happy. So that's another trend that we deal with. And optimization of resources, you know, with trying to keep up with the ever-changing technology. We're trying to be efficient. We're trying to make sure, like I said, various software and applications talk to each other. For example, this morning, our CAD software interacts with our GIS software to show up on a map where fire trucks, ambulances are on for dispatch to easily see, you know, okay, this ambulance is close to this call. So if they're already there, making everything work. So trying to tie everything together, make it to work properly is that optimization of resources. And distributed workforce, this kind of goes back to the user experience and expectations. Post-COVID, we learned, you need to be able to work anywhere at any time, not always in your office or in a building. For us, the other variable is hurricane season. We were already prepped because of the ability to work remotely with possibility of a hurricane. So just having that ability to, be able to connect wherever you're at, you don't have to be tied to your office to be able to do your job. So that was the major trends that we deal with daily. And just this is a quick overview of kind of what we do. Our front line is our help desk. We provide, end user support proactively and reactively. On the reactive side, we use a help desk ticketing system that helps us track daily what we're, dealing with. Our network infrastructure, this is what's running in the background, the firewall, the network switches, the access points, everything that from the time you type in espn.com to get that page to load, all that equipment is what makes everything work for you. Our GIS, before 10 years ago, GIS, you think it's just mapping. Now we're using that data to provide those dashboards, the information for the short-term rental dashboard, the C-click-fix, things like that. So that data is now not just a map anymore. It's used in many different ways to keep us going. Our public safety support, we support all the equipment that's inside, all the apparatuses. We also support the software for dispatch and for the fire department to run properly every day. And then just last but not least, all the various softwares that we support, Microsoft 365, Esri, GovOS for the short-term rentals, Intergov for our planning and permitting, Munis for our financial software. So there's many different softwares that we support on a day-to-day basis. And we have a slide of that a little further in our presentation, but this is what we do every day. It's these main things to support our internal customers, our town staff, our town manager, council, and then also our citizens. So as part of our strategic plan, the first thing you want to do is work on, and I'm sorry, this is just the idea of our help desk. We implemented the help desk ticketing system in May of last year. We're actually closer to 5,000 now than we are 4,500. So that's our day-to-day request that we deal with.
Go back to that,
Yes,
please.
sir.
I may be misinterpreting this pie chart, but I'm seeing things that look like they are an asset. Is this also an asset map of investment for the technology department? And if so, what's it worth?
Sure. This is more of a breakdown of our categories for support. So software, hardware, user accounts or user, your email address, things like that. So if that was a password change, if there was a problem with a printer or copier, that's another category. Phishing, so this just kind of breaks down each category that we have in our ticketing system. So when you would submit a help desk request, it kind of goes by category. So it'll ask you, what's your problem? And you have a drop-down list of certain
So this
things.
represents a request.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. Not really pretty pictures of servers. So we tried to, for our network infrastructure, we support the connectivity for our parks with our public Wi-Fi. So that's one of the many things our network infrastructure provides for our citizens. It's free public Wi-Fi in our parks. these are some of the cameras that connect to our network that, that we're improving and adding on our network infrastructure side. And this was going back to the GIS, like I said, we're not just maps anymore. We're using that data for many different things, like you see on the screen, with the dashboards, the CAD viewer that I was talking about earlier. Cartograph is the see, click, fix request, for the citizens when they have, they request issues. That's another piece of software that we support. This is a couple pieces of technology inside of our fire department apparatus vehicles that we support. And then this is a list of just a few of the many software things that, different pieces of software or applications that we support. And to start this, to start a strategic plan, we wanted feedback from staff. So, this gives us kind of a, how are we doing? What are we doing good? What are we doing bad? What can we improve? So a SWOT analysis in a sense. And everything was 4 stars or higher, which made us feel good. But that, we also asked for feedback. So, like I said, the good, bad, and the ugly. So, these were some of the themes that we were getting as part of those survey feedbacks on what can we improve? How can we help you to do your job day to day internally? And just a couple of these, you will see some answers in our upcoming slides. The need for training, the need to be more proactive. With technology, you never can be 100% proactive just because you have electronics and the variable, we can't control those. But being able to, always make sure your computer, your laptop, your iPad is up to date, making sure you're not running off of a 10-year-old computer. So these are some of the things that we'll address as we go forward with our strategic plan. We're going to talk about, yes, sir.
The last slide, I
Yes,
guess
sir.
you were making somewhat of a description. The one that's jumping out at me is need to balance technology fatigue, technology enhancements.
Right.
Talking about the people or the asset.
A little bit of both. So, Mr. Schroyer and I were just talking right before our meeting today, when you have multiple heavy lists of software implementation or upgrades, or, you fight that burnout from a staffing standpoint of, okay, here's another heavy lift. We just finished with the previous one. Here's one more. So, trying to make sure we have the proper software adequately for users to efficiently do their job, but not to keep piling, things on. So it's kind of a tightrope of, we need to push forward, but we don't need to push you off the tightrope either.
Let me ask one more question. On
Yes.
the bottom, it says, but overall IT management needs direction. Is that policy direction? Is that staff direction? Where do you get that direction?
And that's where this strategic plan comes in. We're getting feedback from internal, external of here's what you guys want us to focus on, as Mr. Orlando or Mr. Gruber or Ms. Stone or Mr. Colin, help us make your staff more efficient. So, let's look at, technology as it grows, with the government, local government. I've always said, we don't need to be the first ones through the door on new technology. We just don't need to be the last. So keeping that balance of, like I said, the not burning everybody out with new technology, every 6 months, but also to make sure we're headed where we need to go technology-wise. Enhanced service delivery. This is one of our major goals for this really just talks about, it goes back to that customer service, making sure as a new staff person starts, we're giving them a proper technology onboarding experience. We're helping them, get acclimated to our network, how everything works, and then also to help with training. You may have used Intergov at a different location, but we do things a little different. So helping them adjust to the technology that they work with every day. Elevating cybersecurity, that's another tightrope that you work with every day. You don't want to lock everything down to where people can't do their job, but you want to make sure we're in a safe and secure environment where we're not susceptible to ransomware, to anything that can disrupt that daily flow. Embracing innovation, like I said, that kind of goes back to we don't need to be first, but we don't need to be last. As new technologies come out, if we were still using the technology that I started with 26 years ago, it would be a sad state. So, having new technology that comes out, see how it fits into what we're trying to do. If it makes us more efficient, let's work towards making it happen. If it's just the same thing that we're already doing, we don't need to worry with that. Expand and enhance the workforce. This goes back to technology changing daily, in talking about, 26 years ago, this is when I started. If that was the last technology lesson I got, you think how much things have changed over that time. So making sure, our technology staff, but also our internal staff has that proper training and the ability to do what they need to do every day. This is a perfect example of project management. We're trying to implement software, we're trying to add networking features, things like that. These are the three main things that, tell or dictate your quality. Of course, cost, staff, things like that, and the scope, what we're trying to do. This is our roadmap of where we're trying to go, and this is our timeline of where we're trying to do it. So, as we present the following things for the next 3 years, this kind of dictates how quickly or how slowly things will go. So one of the things from our feedback was more training. So in January, we kind of jump-started the strategic plan by offering monthly trainings for various software programs, Microsoft Teams. We're doing, this month is the one on Intergov, and talking about, you may have new staff that doesn't know a lot about Intergov. You may have older staff that's been here a while that's used Intergov the whole time, but helping both sides of the aisle see, hey, this is a new feature you may not know about, or hey, this is a piece of, this can make your permitting process a little quicker. Or with integrating Bluebeam into Intergov, now we have the ability to do electronic plan review instead of the 400 pages of looking through plans manually. So
Briefly, what is Intergov?
So Intergov is our planning and permitting software. So anything through planning, permitting, building inspections, things like that, that's that software.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. This goes back to the customer service feature of integrating and adding, as new staff come on, making them more efficient with our onboarding. So it's not just, here's your email address, here's your temporary password, here's your phone number, here's your password, giving them that true, walking them through that, showing them our intranet page, giving them a quick lesson on if they've never used Outlook before or Microsoft Teams, giving them that ability to feel comfortable as they begin their career with the town. This is one that, so the online offerings, you have the workforce that, it may not be easy for them to come to town hall between 8 and 4:30. They may be a 8 to 5 job and they're driving 45 minutes to try and get here, things like that. So the more online offerings we can give them to have that ability to easily submit a plan or a permit or a business license or to, the short-term rental software, the more we can give them that ability to do that at home. It may be 9 o'clock at night, but they still have that ability. They don't have to be here during a business hour to do what they need to do. Cybersecurity measures, like I said, it's needing that ability to keep up with different types of attacks as that evolves. So we want to make sure our current firewall meets what we need to do and keeps us secure. So between that and the Arctic Wolf software that we have, making sure we're safe in doing what we need to do every day. Our network infrastructure, this is just like the backbone of sewer, water, power lines, things like that. Our network infrastructure is what makes everything work every day. You don't want a 20-year-old firewall. You don't want 20-year-old access points. So creating a life cycle for this equipment makes us more efficient, where we're being more proactive than reactive. Improving our connectivity between our buildings as more software applications go to cloud-based, it's like a water pipe. The more water you need, the bigger the pipe is. So improving that connectivity between buildings. Currently, we have 1 gig connectivity between buildings. We're wanting to push that to 10 gig to open that pipe up even more to where we're not the bottleneck of people trying to get their job done. 4-year life cycle replacement on laptops, same thing. You don't want an end user trying to work on antiquated equipment that is slow, causes problems. The more that makes them more frustrated daily. You think even at home, you're trying to do something on your computer at home. If it's an older computer, you get mad because it's slow or it doesn't load a web page, things like that. So that's another thing. We started that this year with our fire departments with interactive touch screen displays for their training centers. So as they're working with citizens and giving them that ability to have the proper equipment for training classes for their staff, but also as they do presentations and items for the citizens at the fire stations. That's a need. Policies and procedures. So as we're improving this connectivity now, we need to address the proper procedure. If there was a ransomware event, we need to make sure we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed to making sure we have a plan of addressing if there was a problem, or if we had a network outage, what's the plan to address that? So those policy updates will make us more efficient day to day. As we moved with currently a lot of our document management that we use in-house is on-site. So with the pitch for cloud-based software and document management is, for us being on the coast, we're one hurricane or one big tree away from being down for hours. So with cloud-based connectivity for our applications and for our documents, as long as you have internet, that's still available. So making as we move that gives us continuity of government from the ability, like I said, from a hurricane standpoint or disaster, or like I said, a big oak tree falling on building D and taking out our server room. That gives us the ability to still work, gives the ability for staff to still work.
Let me ask about that. One of the big concerns is on-site storage. What is the process going to be to get it to the cloud?
It's just literally data migration. So like this past year, we migrated, Tyler Technologies is the one that owns Intergov and Munis. So that was one of the first projects was they are now hosted by Tyler. So we worked with the vendor to make sure, all the things that we were doing in-house, we can still do through their hosted environment or their cloud-based environment. And from a, like I said, continuity of government standpoint, having that ability to be able to issue permits, submit plans post-storm, we're not having to make sure, our current server room is still working from a storm. As long as we have internet connectivity from the EOC to base camp to a remote location, you can still do your job. So having that citizens access online ability still working for that, we're able to receive the plans or permits post-storm, and contractors, citizens are still able to keep rolling forward with repairs or
I
whatever.
understand the value. My question is, what are the nuts and bolts of this town getting data in the cloud versus being kept on site?
It's just staff working, like with the document management system, it's staff working with a vendor to make that happen. So like for our document management project, it would be working with a Microsoft SharePoint expert to help us migrate from our in-house Laserfish model to Microsoft SharePoint.
I would suggest that that's a priority.
Yes, sir, it is.
I mean, God forbid this old building had a fire, we would be in a terrible mess. Associated question, what sort of backups do we have of this data? Where is it kept? And secondly, are there redundant backups? Is there more than one?
Yes, sir. So we approach that in 3 different ways. With our servers, we do what's called a bare metal backup. So it does a current snapshot of a sense of the server, of its settings and everything else. And then we separate the data that's actually on the server, and we currently use Barracuda for our backup system. So it's a in-house appliance that backs up directly from the server, and then it replicates to the cloud. So if in case of the fire example, if building D was burned down, we would have lost that appliance, but we still have that same data replicated to the cloud. And that gives us the ability, in event of a ransomware, we're restoring data from a totally separate location also. So it makes it more efficient.
That's done constantly as the data is being created?
Yes, sir. Our critical appliances are backed up every 4 hours, and are not as critical are backed up nightly. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir. So we're into FY25. So one of the things we also learned during COVID is with desk phones, in a sense, it's a need, but it's not as vital as it used to be. Having connectivity, now you have phone systems that run totally off the cloud. So instead of having the old style desk phone, you can still answer that phone number from your iPad or a laptop, or even from your cell phone as a separate app. So that gives you the ability to be mobile. You're not tied to a phone, or you have a desk phone that you constantly forward. So this gives you portability. And that was, with COVID, we learned you need to be portable and mobile. And this was one of the lessons learned. And as we continue to improve our connectivity to our parks, we're also working to improve our camera systems. Have a lot of outdated cameras in our parks and our facilities. So this will be more of a proactive measure. You think of electronics in the summer, cooking outside in a park for 3, 4, 5 years at a time. You're losing that reliability for the cameras from the heat and the weather. Another piece that we would like to add into our cybersecurity is what's called an intrusion detection system. So most firewalls have that integrated in. We also have that with our Arctic Wolf software, but having that ability to add one more piece of an appliance that is typically monitoring that intrusion aspect of cybersecurity. We'll continue to work migrating our document management to the cloud. This will be a pretty heavy lift. We anticipate a multi-year project for moving all the documents that we have internally to a hosted cloud system. And we'll continue the 5-year lifecycle replacement. So to expand upon that, it's not once every 5 years, we replace everything all at once. We need to balance our day-to-day efforts along with our projects. So this would be just like our laptops. So with this being a 5-year, it will be 20% in FY24, 20% FY25. At the end of 5 years, you kind of start back over again. So it's not doing everything all at once. Same thing with our laptops. It would be a 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. Continuing the laptops. And cybersecurity engineer, we have wonderful monitoring tools, but we need a dedicated staff member to focus on that. It's another balancing act of our day-to-day support that our current network staff has, to having someone that's their primary focus. They're not worried about a help desk ticketing system. They're not worried about, break fix items. They're focused on making sure we're safe. And just, this is I think you could put this line for my career. It's continually looking at what are we doing good? What are we doing bad? How can we improve that customer service that we provide for staff? In FY26, so if you noticed, FY24, we had 10 items. FY25, we've kind of slowed up the amount of things that we're trying to do each year. And it goes back to that triangle of balancing the day-to-day along with those projects and not overloading everybody. So as we go into FY26, we're really just carrying forward those same things that we had started in FY24. And I'm open for comments, good, bad, ugly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sunday. Alfred?
Can you tell us a little bit about whether you've had any cybersecurity breaches into our system so far?
In my 8 months, we haven't. No, we deal with phishing emails and spoofing emails daily. Our email filtering system, I think literally 50 to 60% of our emails daily are phishing and spoofing emails, but we haven't had a ransomware event or anything like that since I've been here.
Do you use a number of outside contractors?
We have like with our software, we use the vendors for the software for support, but we do have some local vendors that we use to help us, like I said, balance that day-to-day load and projects.
And how in the IT department, how many employees work there?
14, including myself currently.
I know you mentioned you wanted a cybersecurity person. Others?
We would like another help desk person just to help with that day-to-day. Like I said, we're just north of 5,000 help desk requests in 1 year. And that's, and that's not just on one person on our help desk. It's, it is software and GIS and things like that. But, it goes back to that customer service, having staff that's not overloaded daily to be able to proactively help, help with those monthly trainings, help with that onboarding. It's that balancing act of not burning everybody out, but also keeping that high level of customer service.
Thank you. That was a better answer than the last time I asked this question of a cynical manager. How many people work in your department? He said about half.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Ames?
I'm very impressed with the strategic plan. Comprehensive. I wouldn't know where to begin. have the background that you do. A couple of questions, though. How many people were in the department 3 years ago? Do you happen to know? I'm trying to understand the ramp up to get to where you want to go.
I think we've only added a administrative assistant in the last 2 years.
You
Tommy,
mentioned,
I'm sorry, there were actually more employees in the department. Previously, we had 15 employees steady for a little while, and that has decreased to 14. So we're now trying to ramp back up to the
so
level
the
needed.
budget has been relatively stable that council has been reviewing the last few years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I'm trying to get an idea. There's a portion of your presentation that said you were going to spend about $500,000 a year for things like cameras, life cycle equipment, and laptops. Is that over and above what we have been spending up to this point?
So before, we really didn't have a replacement cycle for this equipment. Some of the equipment is past end of life, and you have the ability to keep that equipment past end of life, but you're now opening yourself up to downtime, and especially on the network infrastructure side. And network equipment is not cheap. So having that increase in budget is from trying to go back to being that proactive sense to where, we're not trying to make a 8 or 10-year-old Cisco switch still work with, I guess my joke would be baling twine and duct tape. You want to be able to have equipment that's under a warranty, that you can keep under a warranty, to where a lot of, especially with networking equipment, it has a life cycle. So at the end of, I'll use Cisco for example, just because that's what I grew up on. With Cisco, they give you end of life, and at that point, they stop supporting it and stop updating it. You can find a kind of a separate warranty from a vendor, but it's not a Cisco support, to where when you have a Cisco warranty, it's if I called in today we're at 2:00 right now. As long as I got that service request in by 5:00, I would have that replacement equipment the next morning waiting on me. So
Let me ask the question in a slightly different way. If $500,000 needs to be invested, what is the asset amount that we're trying to invest or protect?
to me, I'm not sure if you're not really getting.
The life cycle is 4 or 5 years. You don't multiply 500,000 by 4 or 5 years and say that's the total asset. I'm trying to figure out, we are making a commitment to a strategic plan in terms of hardware.
Right.
What's that worth to us in the town?
Yeah, and like I said, it gives us that ability to be more proactive, to where we're not having unplanned downtime due to a piece of equipment failing that's old, out of date, and having that life cycle replacement. Like I said, generally when networking equipment comes out, generally you think about a wireless access point. Now we went from we're on Wi-Fi Wave 6 now, which is multi input output, so it improves that connectivity speed. But if we're using 7-8-year-old wireless access point, the 4 of you may be fighting for that same access point for productivity. So it gives us, that continual money gives us the ability to like I said, set a schedule of, okay, we're doing the 5 oldest pieces of equipment this year. We're doing 5 more, and that's what that money is.
I understand the thrust. Thank you very much.
Mention the help desk. I'm personally several of those cases in the 5,000 cases, and I can compliment your department for always responding and always responding quickly. So thank you for excellent service.
Thank you. That, like I said, to me, technology is really just customer service. We're providing technical services to an end user.
We have insurance policies.
Yes, cyber insurance, yes, sir. The hard, it's kind of a win-lose situation. You have that ability, but sometimes with certain, with insurance policies now, they're getting so stringent. They keep tightening that noose to where if something was to happen, they don't want you to do anything until their people get here. So we're still in a good side of that policy at the moment, but a lot of them are now basically, if something was to happen today, they don't want you to, they just want you to step back and not touch anything. And, you know, from a customer service stance, it's not realistic. So, you know, you have that, you know, my immediate one is to, let's fix the problem, you know, so it's good and bad. But yes, we do have cyber insurance, sir.
Cyber security attacks. Tighten the screws. Organizations like the town do not necessarily respond to that tightening, that we could see premiums.
Right.
That's safe to assume.
And that's where, talking about backups and where they're at and, you know, are they replicated? You know, that gives us the ability to be proactive in a reactive nature, because we have, you know, it's not always just pulling down data that gets you back up and going. You know, with the bare metal backups for the servers, you have a true updated image or snapshot of that server. So you're not starting from scratch and then running updates and then joining it to the domain and then making sure all the software and everything's installed. So those bare metal backups are really, to me, as vital as having that cloud replication, because hand in hand, you know, as we're pulling down those bare metal backups, we can also start pulling down immediately that data, and we're not months from coming back online. We're, you know, days. So trying to be proactive in a reactive standpoint almost with that. The last one was 26.
2012.
Okay.
Thank
Now,
you.
the technology hasn't changed very much
Yeah, right.
since 12, so that's okay.
Thank you for
Thank you.
the
Appreciate it.
presentation and
Yes, sir.
all the
Thank
hard
you.
work that you and your team.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Hoagland, public comment. Yes, sir.
This is really interesting, and that gentleman obviously has great knowledge. But please, David, please follow me on this one, and Alex and everybody. We have a town website for the taxpayers and the citizens of our community, Hilton Head Island, sc.gov. We have a DMO website that's been ATAX funded, hiltonheadisland.org. The town is the DMO. The chamber is not the DMO. They're hired to act on the town's behalf as the DMO. If you follow me, am I correct? Thank you. So this fellow, I believe if I had the opportunity, and I don't want to brag and tell you how smart I am about technology and especially destination marketing organizations, but I've gained a lot of knowledge over the last 25 years. And I'm sure there's other ad agencies and other people in this island equally or more knowledgeable. But I've got a track record to say that I know what I'm talking about. And so I think if you get the website, hiltonheadisland.org, bring this DMO in-house, hire an ad agency, here's all you have to do. And I think this fellow will follow me here. The internet was started in 1994. The current DMO model that's being run by the chamber actually is a model that's failed, and it's an old, outdated business model prior to the beginning of the internet, which began in 1994. And that's when I got into the internet and got into technology. If you just take the hiltonheadisland.org website, make it a generic website with lots of videos, pictures, and just telling people in the world how great we are. An ad agency can run that, and the only two keywords that you have to buy. In fact, the only keywords that you should legally buy on Google or any search engine is Hilton Head and Hilton Head Island. Just about 90, I don't know what the percentage is going to be, but most of the time when somebody's coming here from New York or wherever they're coming from, they're going to type in Hilton Head Island, and then they're going to get into other keywords like Hilton Head Hotels, Hilton Head Restaurants, Hilton Head Rentals, Hilton Head Real Estate. We don't need to be buying those keywords. Those keywords are for the businesses and the profit companies to be buying. We don't want to be competing with people. We don't want a chamber or DMO competing against for-profit companies. The only keywords that are legal that we want to control, the town, the DMO, is Hilton Head and Hilton Head Island. That's it. We want to drive them to hiltonheadisland.org. That site is advertising free. It's no pay to play. It's no showing favoritism. It's a generic website to promote the entire community. The reason for that is tax monies are being used. When you use tax monies, it can't be used for just individual private profits and use. It's got to promote the entire community. There's your simple solution right there. If I could meet with that gentleman or Tom Gardo, and I mentioned his name because I've known him for so long, I think you can understand where this is going.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, we are being asked by staff to forward this resolution on to full council.
So moved.
Second. Okay, and then if you can call the roll, please.
Certainly. Mr. Alfred?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Four.
Motion carries, sir.
Next, we have consideration of authorizing the execution of guys' stormwater agreements. Afternoon, thank you.
Chairman Brown, committee members. Thank you. So we're asking council to consider authorizing a resolution to add 5 more drainage agreement partners to the list that we have. We've been providing service to various communities on the island starting since 2007. We had the original 9, the largest private communities that we onboarded between 2007 and 2012. And since then, we took some time a few years ago to standardize the terms and conditions of those agreements, and now have kind of a standardized terms and conditions for providing service in private communities. We did 6 more, a batch of 6 in 2021. We updated the standard agreements with the older communities in 2022 based on language blessed by council in 2020. And now we have 5 more that have requested service. Again, all let me go down here to the qualifications for acceptance of new systems. They all comply with those requirements that we've established, which is a single lot ownership within these private communities, platted shared rights of way, and covenants that allow the organization, the HMO, the POA or the HOA to enter into the agreement with the town. And again, the terms and the services that are provided by that via that agreement are pretty specific, related to providing corrective maintenance services on portions of the drainage system that have deficiencies because they're aging. The infrastructure has to provide a common communal benefit within the community. And if that's the case, it becomes a candidate for a project as part of our proactive maintenance program that provides service townwide, both in the outside of these communities and within the ones that asked for these drainage agreements. That's it in a nutshell. I do have a copy of the resolution that would authorize town to enter into these 5 agreements with these 5 new partners. And I have a list that we've been maintaining for years now. keeping track of those that have asked questions. Hey, maybe we qualify, showing some interest, but then at some point they will make a formal request to be considered. So this is just kind of keeping an update on what that list looks like. And here's a current version of the map with current partners shown in yellow and the new applicants currently requesting agreements in purple. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and you might have a few or a lot. So.
Have we inspected the systems in each of these communities to determine status?
So, you know, back when the agreements first started, you can imagine when it was a shipyard or Hilton plantation or sea pines, the inventories are large. A lot of the data is old. The infrastructure varies on dates of construction. There's partial inventories. So we have, the town has undergone an effort over the last, 25 plus years to collect information on and develop a drainage inventory island-wide, inside and outside the gates. We have a whole lot of GIS data that we use every day, and we are constantly working to improve that with our modeling and inventory program to help support us. So we had inventory data, and again, when a new community, it goes through the review process and is permitted by the town as a subdivision, or we will enter that as-built information into our GIS system. We have a pretty good sense of what their infrastructure is and where it is. But we don't require a complete inspection of the whole system to make sure it's intact and functional, because we haven't, all the cars are used cars, and some have problems, some don't, but we have a pretty good sense of what we're onboarding with these new partners.
We're taking on a risk. Some of these systems have been poorly maintained and will cost the town considerable money.
There is, the whole point of the program is to provide service, because all the residents on the island, all the property owners on the island pay a fee, stormwater fee, via the stormwater utility, and all these projects are paid for with those funds. There's very narrowly focused on correcting, maintaining, stormwater infrastructure. So what we have added here at this point, if you look at the map kind of speaks for itself, because the amount of inventory is roughly related to the area in each of these communities. So when we're looking at for instance, the most recent applicants, we can total the information that we have in our GIS system and compare that to the total we have already obligated ourselves to maintain. And we're adding a fraction of a percentage to the total number of linear feet of pipe and the total number of structures that would be added that would qualify within the communities. And again, it's not all the infrastructure in any community, it's just the qualifying infrastructure that supports draining roadway right-of-ways.
I'm just concerned about the expense that we could be taking on, and it seems that some sort of inspection would have been appropriate. It's your expertise, and I have no expertise in this, but that is a concern. That being said, I see a great value in having a uniform system that can deal with stormwater, which we all know is an issue here. So I just raised the question and rely on your expertise.
Yeah, so we do not require inspections. The inspections, if the inspection was to be done right on many of these systems, many of them are partially or fully submerged. Sometimes there's tidal influences. A lot of them rely on interconnected bubbler and pond systems where the connecting infrastructure is submerged. Draining, cleaning, and video inspecting these pipes would be enormously expensive and probably prohibitive for anybody asking for an agreement where we were to provide basically a complete inspection of the system before it's onboarded. And in the case of fairness, if so to speak, if you look at the ones that we've onboarded in the past, everybody wants these agreements because they have systems that they either had problems with or expect to have problems with, because the infrastructure has lifespan, life expectancies, end of life. So how we deal with that is we have a limited amount of money that we can budget toward that. We don't have an unlimited supply of money in our enterprise fund. So we have a budget of roughly, $1 million for proactive maintenance island-wide every year. When we get a request for a deficiency, we vet and evaluate that request, and we rank it, and we have a really succinct model that we use, a tool that gives it a score. We look at the deficiency in all different sorts of ways. That's will be the subject of, maybe we can talk about that. We've talked about a future workshop where we get into the weeds on that a little bit, but it gets a score, and then we give it a budget, and then we sort the list regardless of whether it's on a town road outside the gates or a degree department. They all have scores. We prioritize the scores on the ones that have the highest priority, and that's what you see on our proactive maintenance project dashboard and in our budget annually. We're targeting those highest priority things, but we certainly don't have the budget to take care of all of them, and we haven't promised in here that we would fix anything that was wrong. We've promised to fix what's wrong within our budgetary capacity to do so based on that priority ranking system, and that's all specified in the terms of the agreement.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, make a statement and you push back on it. I remember probably 5 years ago, we were dealing with a similar situation up at Hilton Head Plantation against Skull Creek with a condominium complex that wanted the town to take on the stormwater drainage. There was a complicated situation with a culvert going near a building and outfall that was damaged. Didn't we make them bring that up to our standards before we took it on?
They had some erosion along the very steep bank, along the boardwalk at the edge of the, where it fell off there. And I think that was exacerbated by the Hurricane Matthew event. But most of that erosion was related to the actual bank stability itself.
But wasn't there something in the piping too?
We looked extensively at the piping, and the rub there was, what we were looking at evaluating was the piece of infrastructure that ran through the community that drained a roadway that served the adjacent communities. So it was that pipe system that ran through close to the buildings. And again, I don't recall us requiring a specific repair, and the repairs that the community took on for themselves were related to the bank stability.
I share the same concern that my fellow council member made, that a number of these projects were built in the 80s, probably with aluminum pipe. So I think we can anticipate that we're going to have some expenses taking over these projects. So I just make that comment.
So I guess the limit of our obligation is the limit of our funds. We're not obligated to go out and get more funds or take out bonds or anything like that. If our budget doesn't support providing service, we'll stop providing service.
Except that will land on the council dais.
Correct.
Are you guys willing to say no to your constituents?
Well, again, we're all doing this because council recommended that this town ought to provide this service.
I've raised my little personal red flag on that one issue, and if the policy is consistent, so be it. The last question is, are all of these pretty well built out? Houses on lots?
I'm looking at the map. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that answers another question. Appreciate it.
Couple of questions. Is the nature of the responsibility that would fall on the town under these proposed additions similar to those you have in the larger areas, except these are very small? Otherwise, a similar responsibility, just the size of the particular systems are smaller?
Yeah, so what is described in the drainage agreements as a qualifying deficiency that the town would spend the monies to correct. And generally, we do that directly with the contractor. It would also be done where the community fixes it themselves and can qualify for a reimbursement as long as they abide by the town's procurement policy in the procurement associated with correcting and addressing the deficiency. But we're fixing the same things, whether it's a big community or a small community, whether it's an older pipe or a newer pipe. We're addressing them all, to fix the problem, whether the problem is a failure of a pipe that can no longer do its job, or whether a failure of a pipe or a structure causes a public threat because it's failed, unrelated to its ability to do its job, if that makes sense.
I assume you're dealing with both piping and ditches?
Anything that is part of the drainage system that qualifies, if it initiates in the roadway right-of-way, including the infrastructure in the right-of-way, and then chasing that to the outfall of the system. So it's pipes, it's structures, it's ditches.
Is there a difference in responsibility between areas that are behind the gates and those that are not?
Well, if it's outside the gate, we are totally responsible for it, including routine maintenance. So yeah, it's more narrowly targeted with these drainage agreements for sure. Because we do not do routine maintenance on these systems inside the communities. That is left up to the POAs and the PUDs.
The routine maintenance on ditches and pipes behind the gates are going to be the responsibilities of those particular.
That's correct.
Do you feel with the amount that's of funding available to you each year, are you keeping up with the demands, falling behind, or what?
So that is something we definitely need to look at. Of course, when the town council was presented with the results of the audit earlier this year, one of the things they recommended is that we do a rate study. And of course, that's going to be one of the things that we'll be looking at there would be, the obligations we're committed to, what we're dealing with, what we could expect in the future. And of course, we have an expectation that as the infrastructure across the island ages, we're going to have an increased rate of failure and a higher need for so we'll have more deficiencies. So because the town has decided to obligate itself with these drainage agreements to provide service, we do anticipate that the need for service will increase. And of course, any tropical event of significance is likely to exacerbate and cause a spike in the appearance of those deficiencies, because that's a stress test on the system. So, we have to plan for that as well.
It sounds to me like, given the need of the current system, that there may well be needs for additional funding through the stormwater fees, and that we will have a outside consultant doing a study on what we need for our overall resiliency program, which could also result in the need for additional.
Yeah, these are kind of tied up. Well, whereas much of the resiliency plan is proactive in nature, and with stormwater utility, it doesn't just provide reactive maintenance. We have and again, the proactive maintenance is something we do in the town proper, not in the private communities. But the resilience plan is going to look at the whole island, and we'll have to come up with. So they're definitely going to be interrelated, and there's definitely going to have to be proactive measures taken to protect from a stormwater standpoint, to protect the island.
For both the current and potentially future situations, I shouldn't be surprised if the stormwater fees go up.
Well, I think that's one of the options, but again, the resilient, it's not, I don't think that the intent is for it to rely solely on the stormwater fee to correct all of or address any resilience challenges we have. That plan is, I think, still ahead of us. And that would be something that we would need to be considered.
Thank you.
I think tempted to turn this entire map yellow. My question is, how many others are out there potentially before we get?
Yes, I've kind of did a deep dive a couple of years ago and looked at all the communities that we have on the island, and there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 left. And again, all this size or smaller. So again, the total footprint of additional infrastructure, as far as what we would obligate ourselves to, if we're looking at taking on risk or obligation, is another 1% versus what we have right now.
5 from that 28 number?
What's that?
Are we taking off
We're
5? from
taking,
that
no, we're
28?
reducing it down to around 28. Now, that's all the ones that may potentially qualify. I didn't check all of, I didn't check all of the permit documents. I didn't check all the covenants. I didn't do all that research, but that's the plus or minus is in that ballpark.
Sure, Mr. Anderson.
We looked at a villa project for Speech Villas a couple of weeks ago. It has drainage issues. Would it qualify to participate because it's linked into other systems?
So when it comes to any community that might have water, stormwater by design running through it in a collection or, conveyance system, and it runs from takes public runoff through a private community on a way to an outfall, that would be a public obligation, the way we look at it, for us to correct any deficiencies along that line. But to provide service via a drainage agreement within a horizontal property regime, which does not have individual lot ownership or a common platted right-of-way, that's where we, to date, for the direction we've been given by council, kind of drawn the line. So we're not offering at this point.
Yes.
To provide service inside a horizontal property regime.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Ms. Hogan?
I would be very concerned if I was y'all. This is a lot of money. But I think it gets down to the simple fact that everything within the gated community, the developers and the homeowner are responsible for that. Everything outside and all that tying and drainage should have been, well thought out. I know it's old. I know everything's got to be replaced. Nothing lasts forever. There's repairs that have to be done. But I think what y'all have to do is, like your tax funding and everything that you do, it gets down to the law. What does the law allow? I can just tell you right now that the Supreme Court ruled you cannot use public monies to fund anything, to fix anything inside a gated community. That is the responsibility of the homeowners association, period. Everything outside of that, then I guess you're going to have to step up and you're going to have to pay for that. And again, I bring this up, and you all know this is a problem. You got a lawsuit against you for the $600,000 of dredging of Harbortown. People can say what they want. Oh, it's for tourism, this, that, and the other. It doesn't make any difference. If the public has not got access to a bridge or to getting into Sea Pines or getting into Hilton Head Plantation or any place else, you cannot use their tax monies. Tax monies are specifically designed for the public good, reason, use, and benefit. You cannot use public monies for anything other than that. If the public haven't got access to it, you can't use their money. And you certainly can't fund, again, nonprofits to make a profit, a personal profit off the use of our tax money. So I think no matter what your constituents or what anybody thinks about all this, you just follow the law. Just say, look, I had no choice. I had to follow the law. It's going to be interesting to see how that dredging of Harbortown, that $600,000, I claim that $600,000 needs to be given back to the taxpayers, because y'all are the taxpayers' proxy. You represent taxpayers. It's not your money. You're just guarding that money, making sure that money is spent legally. That's all. That's really what y'all are elected to do. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes. Staff. Pass this on to full council.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. If you would call the roll.
Certainly. Mr. Alfred?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Four.
Motion carries, sir.
Troy, welcome. Well, on the clock. Ready for our next meeting by 3 p.m. So, the floor is yours.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, yeah, my task at hand is financial update, try to get a sense of how we're doing financially 10 months through the year. So we say May 2023, that's when I deliver this, and it's information through the end of April. So this is the wrong one. So we'll see if this works. So key issues, we continue to monitor revenue, control expenses, adjust where necessary. It's 10 months into the year, so we're starting to get a good picture of how the fiscal year might finish. Just overall, revenues are on track to provide for the budget and probably a little bit more. And expenditures are on track to finish within budget. We'll see it's a tighter margin than it was in the last couple of years. So we'll see some of that. The town is benefiting from town council's previous actions, build reserves, diversify revenue streams, and invest in the island. All three of those have been working together to help us do well. A little bit of history from last year. Last year, these are about this. We talked about our revenues, and some of this was just to get a sense for the Finance Administrative Committee. Kind of an early report. How are we doing before the monthly financial statements are available? And so, okay, here's a representative sample. And from this representative sample, we had a really good year last year. Our expectations are that 2023 is less like 2022 than more like a normal year. But just know that our starting point, our reference point of 2022 was a really good year. April preliminary. We don't quite have April done yet, but it's almost there. Give you a pretty good. General fund revenues. You can see ups and downs. You can see the seasonality of our revenues. So that's, I think that's enough about this picture. Year to date, you can see 2023, the highest ones we've been beating last year and beating last year since December. So January through April, we've had good strength in our revenue collections for general fund. Looking at May, we're not expecting a lot of revenue, and you could see it's one of the lowest month collections. However, June is one of our largest month collections. And so we'll be looking for some significant revenues yet to go in June. And so one of the things that we do in June also is that it's the first time of the year that we change from a cash basis to accrual basis. And so many times if we receive money in July that's related to June, then we record that as June. So we do a catch up in June. Low revenue preview, I can go through this. TIF, we're pleasantly surprised. Local A-tax beating last year, which was a good year, so 1.5% of a good year last year, we're happy. State A-tax, slightly less than last year, but last year was a good year. Real estate transfer fees, you see, it was an exceptional year last year. We'll talk more about it later. And so this is more of a regular year. H-tax, 4.5%, we're happy about that. Electric franchise fees, 5.8. We're happy with that. Road usage fee, it's paused, and so we're just barely getting any collections at all. There's not much expected there. Stormwater, we have pretty much collected all of it there. Property taxes, this is really significant. I think part of what we see because of the high level of the real estate transfer fee collections in past years, that if there's a transaction, then it updates their assessment, and we're seeing the benefit in our property tax collections is because of all those transactions raise people's assessments to the market rate. The EMS revenues, we've got two dynamics going. One, we tied our rates to the federal rates, and so that was a little bit of a bump, but our activities are up as well, and so we've got both of those things working together. Permits, I think they're a little bit more tied to interest rates, and you're seeing a little bit of slowdown from a really good year last year. How are we doing? Last year, at just this sample revenue, we were at 99.9, so basically $100 million, or 73%. And the year before, I think it's significant of this just sample, and this sample is just designed to kind of give a sense, a feel of how the town's collections are doing. It's not all of them, but it's most of them. The full year was 86.6, and so 10 months in, we're at 73.2, 73.3. And so we're gonna certainly beat 86.6. We probably won't beat the 99.9, but it could kind of gives you a sense of the range. I think we'll be closer to the 99.9 than the 86.6. Here's a pie chart that kind of shows how much is yet to go. Here's our tax rate. Property taxes, we've already beat last year, so we're last year's totals. Natural disaster fund, that was the 5 mils. We're still getting a little bit on just the delinquencies, but it's not much, and that fades into next year as well. TIF money, again, we're happy, we're surprised at how good that is. Property taxes, we're not expecting much in May and June. You can see our numbers are way down, and so we've mostly arrived at what we're going to get for this year. Beach fees. I think one contrast for our beach fees, you can look at how significant June is. And so we get a lot of quarterly revenues in June and July. So it's coming up and it's, we'll see. Beach fees were beating last year. And so this is the last 4 years. 22, 23 is the best. And so we're happy about that. Although you can look at May and June and there's still yet a long way to go. And so we're not finished yet like we are in property taxes. Real estate transfer fee. The takeaway is that it's been the same. It's been consistent all year long, less than 21 and 22, but more than 20. And so as interest rates rose, our activity slowed down. But still, if you were to not consider the last 2 years, we're having a good year. And this graph shows it a little more direct, is that we have been above the last normal year of 2020 all year. 21 and 22 were exceptional, and we're not as good as that. Hospitality tax, we've been consistently slightly above last year, and so we're happy about that. You can see our numbers are 22, 23 is above the last 3 years. So we're on track for a good short-term rentals, just a little statistics. It'll be interesting to see where this goes, but it's not done yet. There's a lot of work yet to do. Business licenses, local business licenses have been good, but you can still see May and June are still significant. And so we don't think we're done yet, but it's favorable. State, wanted to talk a little bit about this. We've got in 2022 and 2021 some anomalies, some odd payments, oddly timed payments from the state without explanation. We don't dispute it. We're happy to receive money, but it's things that we would not expect to repeat. So you can see the red ones on the left-hand part of that is the current year. And so we can just barely see it compared to some significant payments in the last couple of years in the fall. But our most serious money is in June. And you can see the range variation between 22 and 21. We don't know what that's going to be. And so it's something that we'll keep an eye on and will make a difference in our year-end numbers. This just accentuates local is almost all collected, while the state is almost none collected. Interest earnings. We're happy to report this. We've revamped how we do our investing, and we've worked hard to consolidate our cash. We've worked hard to monitor our revenues and expenses, and we've taken advantage of an opportunity in the market. So as the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates, we are benefiting from that. Our interest earnings are allocated based on the fund that earns them. And so like beach fee earns interest, and so beach fee is credited interest. Our debt service fund earned interest. Debt service fund is credited interest. That's how it works. But we're happy that in this market, we were able to make this contribution. Expenses, the one takeaway on this chart is that June is also where we change from a cash basis to an accrual basis. So June is basically 2 months worth of expenses. June has, for at least the regular town payroll, 3 town payrolls, and the first one in July is partial June, partial July. And so we accommodate for that in June, and it makes June look like it's really high expenditure level. The other example that we might show is that in June, if we get during the year, as we get our utility bills, they're recorded in the month that they're paid. And so we get a June utility bill in June, we charge it to June, and we go on. At the end of the year, if we get a utility bill in July for June, we'll go back and put it into June. And so that's another reason why it makes June a little more expensive. That dynamic happens. So we move on. 10 months into the year, 83% of the year, we're 75% spent on the general fund budget. And if you consider that we've got May plus June is 2 months, and that would be an average of about 8% per month. And so that would be about 3 months worth of spending. 24% added to 75% is 99%. And so we're much closer to completely spending our budget. Here's how we compare to last year. There's move on. Last year, and I think this is significant. Last year we had a strong revenue. We ended up with 3.3 million added to the fund balance. Later in the year, in November, town council voted to spend 1 million of that 3.4 million for housing. And so, okay, I would anticipate that some will be added to fund balance this year. We'll talk a little bit more in detail how much, but I think that would be a good conversation for the Finance and Administrative Committee to start thinking about. Not that we're going to count on anything yet, but they can start the thought process. Normal, we would expect to spend more than we collect in May just because May collections are low. In June, 3 out of 4 years, the town collected more than what was spent in June. So we'll see how that plays out in the next couple of years. This graph really shows that until we get our property taxes in, we're into the red. We have to rely on reserves, we rely on fund balances, and then once we get to January, February, then those property taxes come in and it's less of a burden. We start to show a positive result. And so one good thing to report, if you consider the last 5 years or this year plus the 4 previous, at this moment in time, we're better than we were in the last 4 years. Debt service, we're ahead by 651,000 at this moment in time. There's more debt payments yet to go. We're 73% spent. Stormwater, 2 million spent, 2.9 unspent, but then a large piece of that has been contracted, and so it depends on the time you work on the spending. CIP, there's a special spot in our on our website. You can check the progress of those revenue trends. This kind of says the same thing. 2021 shows a jump, and this is just that same selected revenue, significant jump from 20 to 21. If you look at 19 to 20, it was just a slight drop for COVID, but it was a drop, and then 21 was a more than we expected, bouncing back from COVID, and 22 was even better than that. How are we doing so far? We're 73 million of these 13 revenues, and so we'll see. We're keeping an eye. Here's our budget summary. Revenues, and we'll talk more about this. Revenues are mostly on to 2022 levels. Town operations are within budget, but we're not looking at a lot left on the spend side, but I think we will have some on the revenue side. Capital plans moving forward, investing in the island, a significant step down in our debt, temporarily add fund balance in 2022 for CIP investments. If you look at the CIP that town council is considering, on that CIP is a expectation that there'll be $22 million of appropriations carried from this current year budget into the new year budget. And so what that would indicate would be an expectation between capital improvements fund and the special revenues fund, an increase in those funds temporarily of $22 million so that we spend it in next year. And then I do say that we should add some to the general fund fund balance when all of the receipts and invoices are. So we'll continue to keep you informed. We'll continue to watch the clock, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And and we seem to be on target. We also had one question, and the chair asked me, he said, how can you best summarize this, and how can you best summarize our status? And so I answered him is if you look at our annual report, my favorite way to look at it, and this is just the way I look at it, these 2 pages, 40 and 41, which is basically the funds and then the total governmental funds, revenues, expenses, fund balances. We have something similar in our monthly financial statements, but not quite. And so I think with the chair's suggestion, we're going to see if we can maybe take another look at this and give a little different perspective, and hopefully that will be of use to the Finance and Administrative Committee, and we would certainly welcome any feedback as we continue to improvise, and we want to make these statements as useful as we can, and so we welcome the input.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Questions from the committee?
Good job. Keep us in the black, John.
Okay, we will call for adjournment as we need to be ready for our town council meeting. And very quickly, Mr. Hoagland, please, we got 4 minutes to get ready, so I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. Please do.
It's not about how great we're doing, it's about how we look at the accounting and where all the money's going. What I just saw with a quick review is over 1/4 of our revenues are hospitality tax and accommodations tax. And we don't know, a lot of those monies have disappeared and unaccounted for. The chamber's 11.5 million, we haven't seen anything where those monies went. We have legal fees that are combined in your administrative expenses. We have not seen a breakdown of legal fees, and we saw the 2 articles in the packet that said our legal fees are higher than bigger cities, Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Look, it's a shame, but I think in order to clean the slate, let's just do a independent audit, because y'all aren't CPAs, I'm not a CPA, do an independent audit, clean the slate, see if we have honesty. Reagan principle, trust but verify, numbers don't lie. Start from scratch, get it over with, make everybody prove that everything is fine, and you're done. But for us to figure all this out, you're never going to do it. You're not going to do it unless you get an independent audit.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. We are adjourned. Thank you.